We have got a brand new cEDH commander deck for you today, and it can even be a budget one. So let's go. What up, what up, what up? Welcome back to my channel. I'm Roxora, and here we do all things Magic the Gathering. Today we're doing another commander deck tech where I take a look at a decklist submission, talk about the commander, the overall card choices, as well as the strategy overall. At the end, I'll give it a rating out of 10. Today's submission comes from Professor Amateur. He's preparing for a cEDH tournament, and so the decklist today is very similar to what he is going to run, just a little bit more expensive. Again, this is going to be the budget version. But speaking of decklist submissions, if you have a decklist that you want to be reviewed, I'm always taking submissions. You can do so by leaving a link down in the comments, or you can join my Discord where we have a dedicated channel just for this series. And while you're at it, why don't you go ahead and leave a like and comment, subscribe. All of that stuff would really help me out. All right, let's go ahead and talk about this commander and look at this list. All right, so here is our commander. It is Tasha, the Witch Queen from Baldur's Gate. It is a 3 blue-black legendary planeswalker that has a static ability of whenever a spell whenever you cast a spell you don't own, you create a 3/3 black demon creature. So that ability already right there can be really strong. You just play it out and you somehow cast spells you don't own, right? So spells from your opponent's decks. Already there, you're making 3/3s every time you do that, and that's already pretty impressive. But how do you do that? Well, first of all, we start up on for loyalty, and we could either do a +1 or a -3. And our +1 is draw a card. For each opponent, you exile up to one target instant sorcery card from that player's graveyard and put a page counter on it. Then the -3, you may cast a spell from among cards in exile with page counters on them without paying its mana cost. So you tick up, you exile stuff from opponent's graveyard, so stuff that's been put there, stuff that they've cast already, and then the -3 allows you to just cast it without paying its mana cost, which is super strong. Originally, I thought this card you actually had to cast the card somehow, and it made it so that you could just spend any mana as if it were any color, but no, this just straight up casts the card for free. So any kind of spell your opponents have used now is subject to your usage as well, if you're able to tick up, exile the spell, and then the -3. Remember, you also choose, by the way, the +1 is your choice, right? So yeah, you just get your best choice of anything that your opponents have played over the last few turns, and then the -3, you just get to instantly cast it. And then of course the bottom text, this was expected. Yeah, this is really cool card. This is like one of the cards that I was really interested in, and Professor Amateur here has kind of taken the challenge of like designing, a deck using Tasha to kind of see if it can be cEDH, and it's fairly competitive. I've played against it before a couple of times now, and it's pretty cool. So yeah, let's get into the list and see what we got. All right, so here is the list. A couple of things that I want to note just right off the bat. First of all, this is noted as the budget list. It's $300, which is actually really impressive and like really cheap for a deck that is like, designed to be competitive. Here is the actual list, the like non-budget list. It's $17,000. Primarily because of, again, all of the reserve list cards. 13,000 of that is Time Twister. So just cut Time Twister. It's a $4,000 deck, which is still crazy, but like I guess like way more reasonable. But yeah, we're gonna eat this on out of here. No need for that. Yeah, we're just using what we got here. But what we have here is really cool. We have essentially this kind of combo control list that tries to win with a variety of combos. You already saw, I don't know if you saw Thassa's Oracle, right? There's Thassa's Oracle in here, and there is Doomsday. Where is Doomsday? Sorcery. Which Doomsday is a really easy way to just like combo kill. You cast it and you put the 5 cards in your deck, you draw a card, and then you chain those cards together to somehow win the game. So with Tasha, it's really good because Tasha's +1 just draws a card. So if you have Tasha out already and you cast Doomsday, you don't need to cast a card to start the chain, so to speak. So that's one of the things that Professor Amateur is going to go over here. in his primer, which he's provided. I love primers. By the way, guys, if you are submitting deck lists to me for this series, I would highly recommend a primer, even if your deck doesn't have these like crazy combo lines. Just kind of explaining your decision making or explaining the theme of the deck is really welcome. So highly appreciate Professor Amateur here providing a primer here, especially with I'm not familiar with Doomsday combos, so really appreciate this. So we'll go through this real quick and we'll go over the list. So yes, this is called Tasha's Doomsday. Again, it's designed to be a Doomsday combo deck. Names Jess, combos Doomsday. Tasha is great because she can crack the pile right, as we said. Can draw that card. Let's see. So the main thing is, like, again, we are using Doomsday to combo with Thassa's Oracle. So what we do is we have things like Predict, Gush, Street Wraith, Brainstorm, and Gataxian Probe to draw. Sorry, my dog is snoring. Yeah, so then we have a couple of examples of just kind of like basic combos here, basic piles. So the first thing we do is we stack the pile as Predict, then Malevolent Hermit, Gataxian Probe, Lotus Petal, Thassa's Oracle. The card here, the card that you put over here in the Malevolent Hermit slot doesn't really matter as long as you can remember what it is. So you cast Doomsday, you put the cards in this order, you draw a card with Tasha, and then you cast Predict. You name the card that you put next, which should be Malevolent Hermit in this case. Again, it can be whatever you want. Predict will put it into the graveyard, and then if that was the card which you named, which it should be, you draw 2 cards. You're going to draw Gataxian Probe and Lotus Petal, and then you just get to cast Gataxian Probe and then cast Thassa's Oracle with the Lotus Petal plus 1 extra mana that you have left over. So like this is really all you need. This 1 blue, black, right? So you 3 for Doomsday, 1 and a blue for the Predict, and then a blue plus the Lotus Petal for Thassa's Oracle, and you have exact mana with 0 cards in your deck when you resolve the Thassa's Oracle ability. So that's a fairly straightforward combo. Yeah, essentially just, use Predict and Gataxian Probe to draw the last couple of cards, and then cast Thassa's Oracle. Pretty easy to do, actually, or like pretty easy to understand, right? Here, this one costs less mana, but that's because you have to use Gush, which is really powerful with Doomsday, since you can kind of float the 2 mana and kind of draw 2 extra cards without spending any mana. So you have Gataxian Probe, Street Wraith, Gush, Lotus Petal, Oracle, and it's the same thing. You draw a card with Tasha, cast Gataxian Probe, cast Street Wraith, cast Gush, and then you cast Thassa's Oracle. Easy. With the Lotus Petal, that is, right? So here if you have Lotus Petal plus all these draws, then you only need 4 mana to win the game, which is pretty good. But this doesn't give you any kind of protection, though, right? So like, you can also put some cards like An Offer You Can't Refuse, right? If you have extra mana, which can give you some protection while you're going off. So that's kind of what this is showing off, where you can use Gataxian Probe and Brainstorm and everything to give yourself a couple extra draws so that you can have some interaction with your combo. The other combos here include Isochron Scepter and Dramatic Reversal. This one's a fairly straightforward one that we talked about. Sorry, I closed that. Generates infinite mana. You can draw your deck with Zami or Spectral Sailor. Is that in the deck? We have Spectral Sailor, I know. We do have Zami. Okay. I don't think these are in the cEDH list, I would imagine. I think the cEDH list more focuses on the actual Doomsday combos, but anyways, nothing too spicy in the tutors and interaction slots. They say just Perplex, which is a nice counter spell unless they discard their hand, and then it can transmute for Doomsday. So being both an interaction piece and a tutor is a really good note for this deck. They also talk about Jawari Disruption, which is, this is spelled incorrectly, but it's all good. It's essentially the force spike, though, that where is it? It's right over here. I can put it in here. Jawari Disruption. All right, so the counter lets you pay 1, but it's also a land, which is really nice. Spell Snare, because format has a lot of 2-mana cards. Main ones being Dockside Extortionist, Underworld Breach, Collector Oof, Demonic Tutor, Draenith Magistrate, right? All of these are pretty good. And then there's also this card Nyx, which is an interesting card that counters a spell if no mana was spent to cast it. So pretty good for a kind of budget counter spell that can kind of counter some shenanigans. If your opponent is trying to do degenerate stuff, you can kind of stop it here. And then there are a couple of just odd cards that might look weird in this deck that they're explaining here. So one of these is a really important card to note because of budget reasons. So this is Verity Circle. It's a 3-mana enchantment. Whenever an opponent, a creature an opponent controls, excuse me, becomes tapped, if it isn't being declared as an attacker, you may draw a card. So if they ever tap it for any reason and they're not attacking, you draw a card. And then you can pay 5 mana and tap a creature without flying. So they're like, you can pay 5 mana, tap something, and draw a card. Not the best, right? But the main reason why it's really good is if your opponent is using any kind of mana dorks or any kind of creature with activated abilities, think like Mother of Runes, like they activate Mother of Runes, you draw a card. They tap their Lenoir Elves for a green mana, you draw a card. They tap their Deathrite Shaman to activate its ability, draw a card. So like this card is actually fairly good if your opponent is using stuff like that. And so like for 3 mana, if this like draws you like 2 or 3 cards throughout a game, I feel like it's worth it. And it's very cheap, right? I don't know how much this card is, but it's like very, very cheap. It's 50 cents. So like for a budget deck that is like trying to be competitive and trying to kind of like hose people and draw as many cards, it's really, really nice. Mainly because they're running Mystic Remora and not Rhystic Study. So it's kind of like the budget replacement to Rhystic Study. It's nowhere near as good as Rhystic Study, right? But like, again, for budget reasons, it's pretty good. All right, then we got Mnemonic Betrayal here. 1 blue black, exile all cards from all opponents' graveyards. You may cast those cards this turn, and you may spend mana as though we're mana of any color to cast as spells. And then at the beginning of the next end step, they all go back into the graveyard, and you exile it. Yeah. This is really when I think of like a card that would work with Tasha, this was like one of the first cards that I came up with. So I'm not really surprised it's here. But yeah, like basically, yeah, this is the same. I'd be lying if this wasn't the reason I made Tasha. You get to go off Mnemonic Betrayal and just kind of use all their stuff, cast a bunch of cards with, from their graveyards, or that were in their graveyards, I get you to say. And then you get a bunch of 3/3s with Tasha, and also you just get to cast the really good cards. So yeah. Talk about using their combo against them. Yeah, so like this is kind of like been for a while. This has been a theme in blue black that like hasn't really been used fully, but yeah, it's pretty nice. Siphon Insight is actually kind of the same, where Siphon Insight looks kind of bad, right? When you look at it, it's kind of like a bad thing twice, where you do get 2 cards out of it, but it's like fairly seeming low powered, right? But it gets the cards from the top 2 cards of the opponent's deck, right? So here mentioned that it stops top tutors, right? So like Mystical Tutor and Enlightening Tutor, if they cast that, you cast Siphon Insight, and you get what you get to. First of all, if you can either take the card that they search for, which is probably pretty good, so you're probably taking that, or you get to take the other card and you put it on the bottom, whatever they search for on the bottom, if it's like too not good in your deck or whatever it is, right? But like, point is like you get to kind of tax or kind of disrupt their tutor play. But yeah, this was a card that was not originally on his radar, and that kind of makes sense. Again, this card seems pretty underpowered, but in this deck, again, getting yourself a 3/3 with Tasha, and also just getting to disrupt your opponent's stuff is pretty nice. Having the flashback is also fairly relevant, where like, if this gets like milled or something, or discarded from like a Wheel of Fortune or something, you still have access to it, so it's pretty nice. And then your Hope of Europe here, this is always looks kind of odd, right? But here says foil, since is the only free interaction spell they have. They don't have anything like Fierce Guardianship or Force of Negation or Force of Will, so they don't have a lot of easy ways to interact while they're kind of comboing without using something like Dispel or something like that, or Negate or something. And so Hope of Gearper is a great way to just kind of nick somebody for 1 second, and then they can't cast any spells, non-creature spells, right? can't cast non-creature spells, right? So they can't cast Force of Will or anything like that after you sack Hope of Europer. So this is a great way to kind of, disrupt your opponent, make sure that they can't interrupt your combo. Yeah. So let's just say like this could be the difference between losing and winning games at times. So yeah, and again, fairly budget, right? This card is $2. So very, very smart inclusion, right? Again. And then here's a big question of why, play Tasha if you're trying to be competitive. Why not play something like Yuriko and kind of play the same thing? So wouldn't that just be a better answer? Oops. For the Doomsday, if you're trying to do Doomsday stuff. And the answer here is that these really are not the same in terms of how they work. Again, I've played against both of these decks, and they really are very different decks. As I say here, Yuriko is strong because of their ability to do things outside of comboing. So again, you can just do the normal stuff of brainstorm or ponder or whatever, and put something expensive on top of your deck and kind of drain people out or burn people out or whatever with Yuriko, or do ninjutsu stuff, do lots of combat damage and things like that. That's not really what Tasha is here to do. Tasha is great, as they say here, about grinding out games. So the really important thing with Tasha that a lot of people might not realize is, let me go back to Tasha. So when you tick up and exile stuff, and then you cast the card off of Tasha, the card goes back into the graveyard. So if someone casts a demonic tutor, you get to steal the demonic tutor, then use the -3, cast the demonic tutor, and then later on in the game, after you tick up a few times, if you tick up, and you can exile the demonic tutor again, and then you can -3 again and cast demonic tutor again. So like that's kind of really what makes Tasha really good, is that you just get to kind of recycle, and you're drawing a card every turn, you're using the minus to cast these really powerful spells that your opponents have played, that kind of allow you to keep pace. Whereas I've seen Yuriko, if Yuriko runs out of cards or Yuriko doesn't have what it needs, then it just kind of looks really bad. Yeah, so that's kind of really what's going on. And then it says, over the course of the game, the ability to take people's value cards, as we said, allow her to stay relevant even while behind, right? So those that kind of catch-up mechanic of Tasha is really the reason to play Tasha if you're trying to do this Doomsday plan, right? So if you're Doomsdaying and you want to combo people, that's the way. So for people that know Yuriko or know cEDH or whatever, Tasha is a different deck. So they are somewhat similar in that they are blue-black decks that cast Doomsday sometimes. They're different decks. All right, so now that we've gotten out of the way, let's take a look at the actual list here. So let's see, we've got Tasha here as our commander, as we said. We've got Narset, Part Reveals here, really powerful card, only $2. Again, I am going to kind of mention like the budget here, the cost of cards, because I feel like Narset being such a powerful card for $3, less than $3, is really, really good. So then we've got some stuff here to get back some spells. We got Archaeomancer, Zami gets us more cards. Stealthy Voidwalker is a really, really good card in this deck, getting to disrupt your opponent's graveyard, as well as just sack it for a card and then cast that card, and then you can use it with Tasha. Then we've got some copy spells here. We got Glasspool Mimic. There's also, is there another copy guy here? There's Phantasmal Image. So both of these able to copy certain things. This is a creature you control, right? But Phantasmal Image can be of anything. So your opponent plays a Dockside Extortionist. Glasspool Mimic can copy your Archaeomancer, can copy, well, I guess there's nothing. I don't know. I don't know what the Glasspool Mimic is good at copying, but maybe something good. We talked about Hostage Taker, we talked about Hobo Gear. Hostage Taker is really nice. Again, a great example of disruption, as well as a card card that allows you to enable Tasha. Hostage Taker, just nabbing a Soul Ring, nabbing a Mana Crypt or something like that. Oh my god, you nab Mana Crypt this, it feels disgusting, right? Malevolent Hermit was mentioned in the primer because it is a good counter spell, or just a good card on its front value. And then later on, the part where non-creature spells you control can't be countered become really, really relevant. Talk about that. Notion Thief feels fairly straightforward. Powerful card, steals your opponent's draws. Opposition Agent, same thing, stealing your opponent's tutors. Opposition Agent, again, being really strong because if they end up tutoring, you flash it in, and then you get to cast that card again. Tasha. I can kind of see the theme here. Spectral Sailor here, again with Azame being the ways to draw your deck when you have the Isochron combo. Street Wraith is another one of those Cataxian Probe type effects, so this will help you combo while you are doomsdaying. You mentioned Thassa's Oracle. We've got some budget tutor here in Diabolic Tutor. Again, if you have Demonic Tutor, just run it. Doomsday, Cataxian Probe, and then there's another budget one here in Mastermind's Acquisition. Talked about this. We've got a couple of draws in Ponder, a interesting tutor here in Praetor's Graphs. Search target opponent's library for a card and exile it face down, shuffle their library, and then you can play that card for as long as it remains exiled. So again, really, really good with Tasha. A bit expensive, but I think it's worth it. We have a solve the equation here to tutor for our Doomsday. Good stuff. In our instance, we've got a bunch of interaction and some draw power. So you got Abjure, an offer you can't refuse, Arcane Denial. You got Blink of an Eye here to bounce stuff if we need to, any pesky permanents. The kicker can be nice, but most of the time you're just going to want to cast this for 2 mana. We got Brainstorm, Cabal Ritual, Chain of Vapor for more kind of Blink of an Eye effect, Counterspell, Dark Ritual. So we got a couple of rituals here. Again, these help with the Doomsday combo. So like you can Dark Ritual, and then if and combo on turn 3 potentially if you have the 2 blue mana. Delay is a nice counter spell for cheap. We've got Demonic Consultation to again work with Thassa's Oracle. We've got Drown and Lock for counterspell, foil here, counterspell. Talked about Gush. High Tide is an interesting choice here. It's cheap and it's a good card. I'm not sure what you're doing here to kind of enable it. Or I guess you're just using this to have extra mana. I'm not sure about this card. I'm actually a little confused why this is here. Maybe it's just like a little bit of like a ramp spell, like you play it when you have a couple of islands and you just like you play like a Azami on turn 3 or something like that. I don't know. Seems fine. Mental Misstep here, obviously good counterspell. Miscast, Muddle the Mixture is a good counterspell as well as a good transmute card. Tutor for something like Isochron Scepter, as we talked about many times. Negate, Nyx, we talked about. Perplex, we talked about. And then we've got some interesting removal spell with Pongify, and also isn't there... I guess we're not doing rapid hybridization. We just are doing one of these effects, which is probably fine. So Pongify for some instant speed removal. Predict, as we mentioned. Rewind is a nice budget counter spell. It's kind of pseudo free, where if you have the 4 mana, it gives you back the 4 mana. We've got Snap here to kind of be a free bounce spell. Can also be really good with Hostage Taker. Can be good with Chaomancer and things like that, or anything that you want to kind of bounce. We got Spell Pierce, Spell Snare, Suspend for removal, Wash Away as a cheap counter spell again. Counter targets is kind of very similar to what was it? It was very similar to Nyx, right? Counter target spell if no mana is spent to cast it. This is counter target spell that wasn't cast from its owner's hand for 1 blue mana, and then you can cleave it, which is kind of like Kicker for just counter spell. Or sorry, not counter spell, cancel. So yeah, a lot of interaction here and a lot of draw power. Good stuff. For artifacts, we've got a bunch of ramp and some kind of utility cards. So you've got Arcane Signet, the Charcoal Diamond, is there a Sky Diamond? So these are really good budget kind of signets if you don't want to run as many of the stuff like Mana Crypt or anything like that, right? Got Commander Spear, Dimir Signet, Fellwar Stone, Lotus Petal is kind of again needed for the Doomsday lines, even though it's a little expensive. Midnight Clock, a really good budget card. Mind Stone, Prismatic Lens is ramp spell, I guess. Soul Ring, talk about Sky Diamond, got the Talisman here. So then we talked about Isochron Scepter, again comboing with Dramatic Reversal. Where's Dramatic Reversal? There's no oh, there it is. I was about to be like, I didn't see Dramatic Reversal. There we go. All right. I was like, what, is it not in the list? No, it is. All right. I was like, Professor Amateur. Wow. All right. Isochron Scepter, again, do combo with the Dramatic Reversal there. And then we've got Talisman here to be kind of like a budget demonic tutor. I guess you can use this with Chain of Vapor, right? Can use it with Chain of Vapor. Can use it with Snap is only a creature, but like you could like Wish God Talisman and then like snap it, or sorry, not snap it. Whatever it was called. Where to go? Chain of Vapor it. So like for 2 mana, you cast it, and then one in a blue, right? You activate and then you Chain of Vapor it immediately. It is a play. Anyways, but theoretically, you're activating this and you're winning the turn you activate it, so probably not needed. And then we have enchantments here, Mystic Remora and the Verity Circle, as we mentioned, just providing you with some extra cards. Mystic Remora being a really good turn 1 play, given that, again, we don't have a lot of 1 mana plays besides Soul Ring and things like that. So Mystic Remora is a fine card to play on turn 1, see how many cards it draws going around the table, and maybe keep it around. Nothing crazy in the lands. We got a Witch's Cottage here to help rebuy some creatures. We've got some budget dual lands that draw cards and stuff like that. I think like the lands here are probably like the biggest place for improvement, right? Mystic Sanctuary to rebuy some spells. Memorial of the Genius, Memorial of the Folly, Cycling Lands. Cycling Lands might actually be kind of interesting with Doomsday, but yep. So like this is like very, very cheap land base here. I would highly recommend kind of making some improvements here, but again, keeping in mind that it is a budget list. All right, so let's talk about this list and the strategy overall. So again, we are kind of having to run a couple, kind of dial down the power level of the deck because it is budget, but we still get to run really powerful cards like Gush, Counterspell, and things like that, Muddle the Mixture, right? And also our Doomsday, right? So we still have, just these lines of like, tutoring for Doomsday, albeit a little bit slow, unless we open up some of our insane ramp. But we can still just like Doomsday and cast this and win as early as turn 3, turn 4, turn 5 with this list. We also have a bunch of really good disruptive elements, right? So you've got the creatures here, you've got the Hostage Taker, you've got Malevolent Hermits and stuff, as well as all the counter spells again, both for again disruption and protection. And then, just these 2 cards here existing in your deck means that you're going to annoy the crap out of your opponents when they come down. I guess also cards like Siphon Insight or cards like Tasha can also kind of just naturally disrupt your opponents if they're trying to use spells in their graveyards and things like that. So overall, you have this deck that is, again, it has its own game plan of, casting Tasha, getting cards off of it, getting card advantage, using them to kind of assemble your own combo, while also just kind of just naturally, or just kind of casually disrupting your opponent's gameplay themselves. Yeah, so really interesting list. The one thing I'll say is, I guess besides like, you know, snap and some things like that, there's no any kind of wrath effect, like there's no damnation or anything like that. There's no cyclonic rift and things like that. Again, I'm trying to think of budget, but there definitely feel like should be some type of creature interaction. Decks might be a little soft to like flyers. Like Tasha's really good when you make the 3/3s. Those 3/3s should be really good at keeping you stable on the ground. But if someone has like a large flyer just attacking you in the air, seems like a really easy way to die. But again, maybe with the counter spells you have enough to make sure that something like that doesn't come down, or maybe somebody else has interaction. So I don't know, might not be needed. I guess we also have Pongify, so we do have some kind of individual creature removal. I'm just thinking of like any kind of massive board. But aside from that, I love using Tasha, and I love seeing, especially in the primer, the mention of these cards right here. Of, you know, specific cards that are used both for budget reasons but also to synergize with Tasha. I'll say this a bajillion times now. I love when commander decks allow for certain cards that wouldn't normally be played to all of a sudden shine. So Mnemonic Betrayal is a card that probably would see play in some decks somewhere at some point, but like seeing it here and seeing it really shine in Tasha is really exciting. Hostage Taker, another card that like would probably still be okay in a commander deck, but like really doing well in Tasha and things like that. Siphon Insight, right? So again, Siphon Insight was not a card that like anyone would consider normally, but here it's really good, being disruptive, but also using it with Tasha. So yeah, really like that. And then also really like the interaction with Doomsday. As you said, like one of the biggest things of Tasha is the fact that it draws a card. You know, heck, even the -3 could like cast another spell that like draws you some cards as well. So like you could it could be even easier to Doomsday combo if there's a card, you know, like Brainstorm or something like that underneath Tasha, right? So that's all pretty cool, and I really like seeing that. So yeah, that's kind of all I want to say about the strategy overall. Again, it's your standard combo control deck. Again, some people might look at this and be like, it's just another Doomsday list. This is boring. But I'm actually really excited by the list again, especially since the deck, again, it doesn't need Tasha, but it works really, really well when Tasha's out on the field. So what would I give this what would I rate this deck out of 10? I'm going to go ahead and give it a 10 out of 10. There are a couple of things that I am confused by, the high tide and, you know, some things like that, you know, and also kind of why all the tapped lands. Like I feel like you're a 2-color deck. I don't feel like you need all of these crazy things. And also there's definitely ways that you can, you know, maybe you put an extra like 20 bucks in this and you have a nice mana base here. But again, I'm trying to think of this in terms of it is a budget deck. It's got to be budget. You know, Doomsday. How much is Doomsday? Doomsday is like $11, right? You've got Lotus Petal is $20. So like, you know, already the price is like stacking up. But I would like to see at least a coherent mana base, or instead of freaking Lonely Sandbar Memorial to Folly, Memorial to Genius. Like I think that you can do better. But that aside, I'm still going to give it a 10 out of 10, I think. Building a really, really competitive deck with Tasha, making kind of this brand new commander work really, really well, and kind of fully utilizing all of its capabilities, right? That there's no aspect of Tasha that's not utilized in this deck. The 3/3s are relevant, the draw card is relevant, the casting of spells is relevant. All of those parts of the card are used to their full extent. Yeah, I really, really like that. So kudos to Professor Amateur for the list. Again, if you want to see both the budget version and the non-budget version, I will put both of the links in the description. And yeah, again, remember guys, if you have any deck lists that you want to be reviewed, remember, submit them, comments, Discord, all that stuff. And remember, leave a like, comment, subscribe. If you enjoy this video, if you enjoy this series, let me know. I'm always happy to continue doing more of these, but again, I need submissions as well. So submit. All right, guys, hope you guys enjoyed this list. I know I did. I've loved playing against this deck. But that's going to do it for me, and I will see you guys for the next video.